Hey, kia ora koutou
Hey,
whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Hope you're all well. Welcome to a Monday and welcome to Still Not Chewy.
still
It's
not
Paul.
chewy.
Paul the other one and Paul. How are you, man? Are you okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I'm getting an echo because I've also got the stream going on in the background because I'm that big a fan.
So turn the stream off or at least mute
Yeah,
the YouTube channel and then you'll be good
yes,
as gold.
done and
Um,
dusted.
so before anybody else asks the question, Chewy is back tomorrow night. 100% back. He's finished his Fringe Festival activities. He's got some family business this week that he's taken tonight off for. And by the way, it is a public holiday in Dunedin at the moment. And so, workers are entitled to their time off, Paul. So Chewy's got some time off tonight. So there you
That
go. There you go.
Do it while you can because they're getting rid of some holidays. It might be the local anniversary holidays.
I still think that they should make the anniversary holiday the same for the whole country. I mean, why do
Yeah,
we need to have? Because there's been a few times where I've been trying to make phone calls for businesses, and it's been like Wellington Anniversary Day or whatever. I think Auckland Anniversary, for people who don't know, is the last weekend in January,
hmm
and it's a great time. Music festivals and stuff, they all happen around then. I reckon that we should just change it. That everything is the anniversary is the same on every single calendar for everybody in New Zealand. Last weekend in January, it's great, but it's a good week for people in Otago and Dunedin because they have today off and then they're
and then
back into
Friday.
Friday off. Yeah.
Mm.
In fact, what a lot of people do down here, Paul, is they will choose to work on the Otago anniversary and they'll just add
hmm
it to Easter. So I think, I might be wrong, but I think Otago Uni might have been on today, and then they'll have a 5-day weekend rather than a 4-day weekend
Oh,
upcoming.
that
So
does sound good.
yeah,
I'll
but
take
yeah,
a five
very
day weekend.
cool. Oh, look at this anyway. Look, people already will say hello to these people. Oh, fucking love, Paul. Anyways, did you see that Auckland University ranked Kaora Ako school lunches A plus? They should get more funding. Yeah, I know, I didn't
Yeah,
see that, but
their findings came through saying it was incredible value for money for what you're getting out of it. But there are some people who don't like hearing things like that.
yeah. And from Peter, happy Otago Anniversary Day from the People's Republic of Dunedin. That's what Peter says as well. Thank you both for your super chats. I do appreciate. I got a little bit of stick from someone the other day because someone gave us a $2 super chat, and I think, oh, look at this. Thanks for the little super chat, meaning nothing by it. But I got a message from someone saying, maybe you shouldn't say little. And I'm like, fair point, but no offense intended. No offense intended. Lots going on tonight. We've got, and as it's always on a Monday night, heaps and heaps and heaps to talk about, including some stuff we'll probably finish off properly tomorrow night. But talking about the $75 back in ECE costs, we're going to have a look at that in a second. Just a real brief look at it because I haven't set up for it tonight. So I'll have a quick brief look at it, then we'll probably cover it off properly tomorrow night. But as we always do, I want to say a huge thanks to the patrons. Love you guys to bits. Thank you for being a part of what we do. No matter where you sit on that list, you are valued and valuable to us. Catherine down here as a coffee runner came on over the weekend and really appreciate you guys being a part of what we do. Need you to do what we're doing and appreciate you all at the same time. The other thing to just make you aware of, and this is for people who bought merch in the last week of the merch run, there was a glitch between the printer and the clothing manufacturer. I've already been in touch with you. If you haven't heard from me, then everything's fine. But some people had to get different sizings because the clothing manufacturer didn't have those sizings in. And because of that, it all got put back a little bit and the order's in now and it'll be at the printers hopefully tomorrow. And being realistic, we'll get them sent out. I'll have some slave labor with my teenagers over the Easter weekend. So we'll put them in the post end. So apologies if you've got merch. Lots of people have emailed me, say, hey, is it coming anytime soon? And I know you're okay with it. There's no one giving me grief, Paul. But I'm wanting you to be aware that it is on my mind. I am chasing it up. But there was a third party glitch between printer and producer of t-shirts and hoodies, which I've got no control over. And so that's where we're at. I probably will email everyone as well in the next 24 hours just to let them know if you're waiting on merch to what. Just so, although in saying that, some people actually got their merch last week from the first run. And I think I heard from Kiwi Skirt who got herself some merch with her name on it because we're doing personalised merch. And she said in an email to me, it was fantastic. So there you go. So it is coming and it is fantastic.
That's high praise. It's very
Yeah.
high
Now,
praise.
well, speaking of, you got merch. Hey, why don't we tell people where to get your stuff? What's the site? I'll
Um,
put it up now.
I was going to say, if you just go onto my link tree, which is linked into everything, I think it's the first one on there because I can never remember all the addresses that I've got. Yeah, it's just the Redbubble site, so people can jump in there. It's all in Australian dollars because I can't get it into New Zealand dollars. So I feel really bad about that because I don't like encouraging people to spend money in Australian.
There we go.
Yeah, that one.
Redbubble. So if you go into Redbubble and just look up Paul Barlow, then you'll have a chance to pick up some merch. Oh, I see. That's very cool. So it's up in the top corner.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, I like that one there. The lightweight hoodie. That's cool.
There's a few different things.
Do a merch swap.
That'd be fun. That'd be so much fun.
Very good. There you go, people. Go support Paul and what he does. I know you're going good here. You got the
I got to say that the cell phone cover looks really good. I'm really happy with how the cell phone cover. God, I feel like I'm on an infomercial.
Hang on.
Only one down payment of.
Hang on. Show us again. Show us now so we can all see it better. Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Shiny. Yeah.
Oh, now you're making me think, bro. Now you're making me think. Gosh, everyone's always asking us for cups, so yeah.
Cups are a big one. Like cups are like the most simple merch that everybody's going to use. They're going to find something to do with it. So yeah, I think cups are a great piece.
Oh no, Kiwi Skirt says she just bought 3 phone covers today. No. Damn it, me too. Actually, I upgraded the phone the other day and got a cover for it. So I'll have a look. Anyway, hey, all right, let's have a look at the story. We're not actually going in depth into this, like I've said. In fact, we're not even playing the story because the story is Kiwi families to get up to $75 back a week. And look, the media is still a little bit, even though they did show the numbers in this story, fair enough, credit where credit's due. See if I can scroll along the bottom and find it without actually going back to it. They did show how the numbers would be, but it is up to. So it's not $75 a week. And one of the problems is, remember, the government we've got in now has been talking about bureaucracy, has been talking about layers of bureaucracy, has been talking about, cutting red tape, making things easier, not making things more difficult. We want people to be able to thrive and have no extra hurdles to get over. It seems that the biggest thing about this is how difficult it's going to be to actually get. So
it's not simple.
No, it's not simple. And we're not even playing the story because all I want to play for you is the end of the story where Mikey explains it. The story is the story. Up to $75 a week, gives the numbers, yada, yada, yada. Labor says bad, National says good, yada, yada, yada. That's the story. And then Mikey comes back and gives us the information. And congratulations to Mikey on her new political position.
Yeah, that was great news.
Yeah, good news. And she gives us the lowdown on how to actually do this. Remember, we're not looking at the story tonight, but this is tonight's news. So let's just have a quick squiz at what this government considers to be less red tape and easier.
We'll bring in Mikey from Parliament. Kia ora, Mikey. Will there be difficulties with this payment?
Kia ora rā tātou I tēnei pō. Well, look, while the government will be celebrating today's announcement and families up and down the country will welcome any ounce of extra support, this policy, it will be a logistical nightmare, a red tape rigmarole. The National Party originally wanted the IRD to pay families direct every fortnight.
So that sounds easy, yeah? IRD sorted out, kind of like working for families, just figure it out, guys.
But when it came into office, it was told by the IRD that was simply not possible because it did not have the system capability and it would take 2 to 3 years to get that system up and running. So
can we just ask this question as well, right? The government often criticises the other side, whichever government it is, whichever other side it is, about not having their due diligence done, not crossing the T's and dotting the I's, making promises before the election how this would work, without checking how this would work. Screams of incompetence, Paul.
That was my first thought when I heard about how they had to change it and why they had to change it. It was, why would you not look into that sort of thing before you put this plan together instead of just going up to $75 every fortnight? It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, and not just that, it gets worse as to how people are going to get this money. Have a listen.
So now the onus, the responsibility, it falls back onto parents. They will need to gather 3 months worth of invoices from their early childhood centres. They will then need to file those invoices with the IRD. And Nicola Willis has been told that some families simply will not take up the option of this payment because of that administrative challenge. So that will need to be a big focus area of the government if they want people to make the most of this money. In terms of the money, the cost of this policy is set to be around around $723 million over the next 4 years. That is around $244 million less than what National predicted it would be on the campaign trail. Now, on the one hand, you could say, that's nice that the policy will cost less. But on the other hand, some may say, they wonder whether National's numbers were in fact rock solid.
And also the other thing is, or else, what has happened between the promise and the implementation that they've actually left out? So what is not there? And remember what this is National's version of 20 hours of free childcare. Labor does it, or the left does it, and they basically make it a cover-all, one size fits all, everyone slots in there, nice and easy. National comes in, tells us they're going to cut red tape, makes it difficult. I mean, it sounds like you're going for a bank loan. I need to see 3 slips of this and that, and then you might get up to $75 a week back.
It's like if you do your own GST returns through the IRD website, it's complicated and it's messy, and you've got to have all the paperwork that you've had for months on end. And how many people with young kids are going to be keeping very nicely tidy, organized paperwork, all their invoices from ECE, just to make sure that they can get this rebate and have the time to sit down and do it? It just feels like they're piling more work on so that people are discouraged from doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's that's well, it's not a what is it? A pessimistic view. That's a pessimistic view on it. But but yeah, fair comment. It's like, is it now being done on purpose so people won't get it? Because remember what we've been saying: every single solution that the national government seems to be putting out at the moment is for one reason, right? The problem they're trying to solve is not enough money for tax cuts. So maybe the extra red tape for them is we can find another couple of $100 million out of this. Maybe.
I think it's a really important thing that people remember that tax cut as well as their driving force. Every claim they make, you have to take it back to that now.
Yep. And they haven't. So remember, this government, the previous government, was not necessarily living outside its means. And what I've seen, no one ask any of our leaders yet. What I haven't seen anybody ask them. So we're cutting all these public servants, right? There's 2 things we haven't seen them ask. And I've been having this conversation online over the weekend. The first is, where is your evidence that the number of public servants there are right now is too many? It's all well and good to say it's gone up 16,000 people, but let's just say hypothetically it was undermanned by 20,000 people. Then the extra 16,000 wouldn't be too many. We've seen no evidence that the new layer of public servants, the new public servants, is too many. We haven't seen that. We've heard numbers.
I'd be interested to know as well if that increase in public servants matches the increase in population. Is it a justified increase because it's in relation to the population increases that we've had over that time frame as well?
Yeah. I've done those numbers once, and it doesn't quite match it, but it certainly doesn't. It's disproportionate to say just 16,000. Because there has been an increase in numbers. It hasn't been to the same level. So we haven't heard that, or we haven't seen that at all. And the other thing I haven't seen the government asked is, if you weren't just plainly and bluntly, you're saying we can't live beyond our means. If we didn't give the tax cuts, would we still be living within the income that was coming in? As simple as that. So stop saying we can't live beyond our means, because living beyond our means is including you shelling back $3 billion. If you didn't shell back that $3 billion, would we then be within our means? Because then what you're saying is it's a trade-off. Let's be honest about that. So that's what I haven't heard people asking yet. I don't know.
Right, the press will ask tomorrow probably now. If they're watching.
Yeah, because they do. Funny how the questions pop up just the next day. Hey, let's have a look at something I put on Twitter today. One of potentially the scariest photos you've ever seen in your life.
Is that what the Crypt Keats is up to these days?
Well, I put my Twitter feed was something like, what's that saying about a picture and 1,000 words? So I think this is a really interesting story. And I think there are a whole bunch of old men shouts at clouds about this. But in saying that, I think that my understanding is they signed up to this, they being the group running the Sale GP signed up, knowing that there was this condition. Yes. And because they signed up to it, knowing that there was this condition, to be bleating and moaning and whinging about it now seems a bit far-fetched. I get the frustration completely with you, get it, understand it, but these are the conditions you've signed up to. If you wanted it not to be like an issue ever, for not to have these Hector's dolphins get in your way, then you shouldn't have had it there. You should
Yeah, don't have it where the dolphins are.
Exactly. So this was a condition that they signed up to, and when that condition had to get called upon, fucking Russell Coutts bleating and moaning and whinging about it, saying that SailGP's never going to come back to New Zealand. It's like, good luck, son. On you go.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at the story, shall we? Let's have a look together. And this is all about these evil dolphins who held a protest and they got in the way to cancel SailGP.
Stark difference to yesterday when Dolphins forced organisers to cancel and refund thousands of tickets. The SailGP chief executive inconsolable this morning.
SailGP have had this extreme marine mammal mandatory protocol forced upon it.
Russell Coutts refusing to talk to most media, but using a radio interview to call out individuals by name.
Dolphins are...
I mean, what a dick.
That's a dick move.
What a dick, right? Dick move. Calling out people by name for standing to the agreement that they penned at the start. What a dick. Yeah. Honestly.
Extremely intelligent mammals and are inherently aware of boats around them. The Hector's dolphin is not an endangered species, as Otago University professor Liz Sluton recently claimed. That
very, very, very good line coming up here from the professor. He just said that he's basically saying dolphins are clever, they'll get out of the way. That's what he was saying, right, as a part of it. But the professor has a great comeback.
was a lie.
The IUCN is the international organisation that lists endangered species, and Hector's dolphin is definitely on that list.
She says the speed of the boat is the problem.
It would be a bit like saying that children are inherently aware of cars and trucks and therefore there will never be an accident. The child will just naturally get out of the way. It doesn't work like that.
But if it was to be the last, the punters were making sure to enjoy it. The hill's busy for a second day.
The atmosphere is even better than it would have been because of yesterday.
Even if some...
That means Hector's dolphin did them a good job. If it's better today than it would have been.
Even turning up, really, because it'll probably happen again.
We're looking for dolphin sushi, so...
Could yesterday end up being the nail in the coffin?
I certainly hope not. People could see it as being that, but I certainly hope not.
And as the New Zealand team took the lead, everyone painfully aware that the winds were turning.
I think they should sell some heart pills around here.
Today, a win for New Zealand, but perhaps for the last time here.
I mean, whatever. A win for them, maybe the last time here. These are the kinds of things that cities will have. I'm surprised it went to Christchurch, actually, because normally cities gag at getting these sorts of things because that makes them a lot of money. So unless, okay, here's the real pessimist, unless what he's saying is they've already signed up someone else to be the next host and they're trying to get out of the contract. I don't know. You still with us, Paul? You're sitting very still. No, Paul's gone. That's why. I was thinking Paul was looking very, very still there for a second. So anyway, it's just if you agree to conditions of a contract and then those conditions have to be fulfilled, you don't bleat and moan and bitch about it. That may well put you in breach of contract. I don't know. There were some interesting things said in the wrap-up afterwards with the reporter. Let's just have a quick listen to that. We'll see if we get Paul back. It's what the reporter said afterwards.
It's not just future races in Christchurch in jeopardy. What more can you tell us?
Well, in that same interview, Sir Russell Coutts implied that the sailing might not only never be back to Christchurch, but that it may never come back to New Zealand at all, unleashing quite the tirade, really lambasting everyone from the harbour master by name to the Department of Conservation and the local hapu Ngāti Wheki. We reached out to each of those parties to give them a fair chance to respond. The harbour master told us that it's his role to make sure that everyone in the harbour is safe, not just the SailGP yachts. Whereas Doc told us that SailGP was fully aware that it was organising an event in what is a marine mammal sanctuary. The local hapu Ngāti Wheki saying that marine mammal plan actually helps SailGP to avoid breaking the law, because there is a law in New Zealand, the Marine Mammals Protection Act, which makes it an offence to harass, disturb, injure or kill marine mammals. And look, the fallout continues from this. We'll have more from my colleague Jordan Oppett and the Sports Break.
So there you go. It's just a lot of hoo-ha. And as I said, I mean, Russell, I was working in Talkback when Russell Coutts went off to left Team New Zealand, and I was never one of these people. I can see people in the chat right now calling him a traitor and stuff. That was never my vibe, because it's his job. He's entitled. And I remember people phoning me up doing talkback, going, "Oh, so if the opposition, tried to poach you, would you?" And I'm like, well, if they were offering to pay me 4 times as much, yeah, of course, most people would. There isn't many people watching right now. If they got offered 4 times the salary, wouldn't go and work for whoever the opposing group are. So I wasn't such a big proponent of the traitor as is going on in the chat now, and certainly went on at the time. But this pearl clutching, this whinging and crying and just saying it's so terrible and threatening not to bring it back to New Zealand at all, ever. I mean, we're supposed to be this country who is ecologically friendly, and we look after our wildlife, and we look after our our native flora and fauna. And then when we do it, the wealthy rich pricks go, they'll get out of the way, won't they, Paul?
Yes. I'm just going to assume yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. My internet decided again to crap out on me.
That's all right. I'll just get to the super chat for $5. Thanks, JK. We are the only place with Hector's dolphins. I think it must be rich pricks aren't endangered. Yeah. Now, look, I just think it's I do get it. If I wanted to go watch my favourite sport, going playing sports ball, and there was some native ducks who were in the middle of the field and couldn't get moved, I'd be frustrated. But equally, if there was an agreement that said, you guys are playing this sports ball game in the middle of this area that native ducks, and if any turn up, you're going to have to go pause. If that was the agreement, then possibly I'd be more, maybe this is it, Paul. Maybe people should be more pissed with SailGP for signing that agreement. Maybe they should be more pissed at not taking it to a place that didn't have this condition. Maybe he's just trying to, it's like when it's the squirrel, to look away, throw all the anger at the dolphins because you fucked up by signing this agreement that maybe you shouldn't have signed.
They must have thought when they signed it that the dolphins are never going to be a problem. Why would they show up anywhere near us? Because they're smart enough to get out of the way like a child in a car.
That was such a very good analogy. Because following that analogy, we can do... And look, the reason I'm going to play the next bit next about old Simeon Brown is because this is all about children and cars and speeds. So it's actually got quite a nice flow on, a segue, if you will. But yeah, what a great analogy. If you were happy for the dolphins to be smart enough... I mean, children are much smarter than dolphins, most children. I'm sure they're going to get out of the way of cars if they see them coming, but it doesn't quite work that way. So, unless you've got anything else, Paul, we'll just rip straight into the next one because
let's go straight into the next one because I love this clip.
It does have a flow on. So Simeon Brown, we've got one clip here, and to be honest with you, can I be really, really frank? I did not watch all of this interview, and one of the reasons I did not watch all of this interview is in the first 4 minutes he doesn't answer a single question once.
Okay, so this is a spoiler for my video tomorrow. I actually sat down and counted how many times he doesn't answer the first half of the interview, how many times he doesn't answer 2 questions. And it took up 10% of the whole interview of Jack Tame having to ask him the same thing over and over. It's insane.
We gave some credit where credit was due to the health minister last week. His answers were awful, but most of the time he was answering. It was quite refreshing. And we were comparing him to Mr. Luxon and Mrs. Willis. This guy is worse than Luxon and Willis combined. Like, honestly, you don't often see Jack Tame move to the next question, but obviously in the moment he was like, I could ask this question again, which would be valid, or if I don't move on, we're never going to get to the end of this interview. And if you notice, it's 30 minutes. When was the last time Q&A had a 30-minute interview? I mean, they're sometimes in the early 20s, but 30? 30. Yep. So we're going to watch some of this now, and you're not going to hear any of the questions he asks answered, because he literally oh gosh, I like that. Oh, I like that. It's a bit rude, but I do like that. I do. That's a good. That's not a bad. That's not a bad analogy. Not a bad one. I could not put myself through, especially when I was waiting to get into my gumboots today and go build in the garage. I could not put myself through 30 minutes of no questions being answered. So I've given you a warning, people. He's not going to answer the questions, but we're going to have a look at this when they're talking about they're talking about people not following the law. I know that's a note I've written to myself. They're talking about speeds around schools going from 30 or 40 kilometres per hour always to changing them to intermittent. So coming on when needed around school times. That's what they're talking about. And this is where the non-answers start.
What is the potential downside to changing speed limits outside schools?
Well, what we want to have is the ability for people to get where they need to go quickly and safely.
Not the answer.
One of the key areas, though, that we need to ensure that there is safety is for young children arriving or being picked up at schools. And so we're not going to continue the last government's blanket approach to reducing speed limits. We have targeted interventions, and as part of that, we'll require schools to have a slower speed limit at those times of pickup and drop-off, which a lot of other countries do as well.
So what are the potential downsides to having variable speed limits outside schools?
Well, ultimately, it's a targeted approach. It's about actually saying, I don't think there's any downsides.
There's zero downsides whatsoever.
I think it's about making sure we are improving the safety at the time when children are being picked up or dropped off outside schools. And this is about ensuring that the traffic's moving slower and there's improved safety at those times. But actually, the rest of the time, people need to get where they need to go. And so we don't want to take a blanketed approach like the last government, where there's whole swathes of Auckland are now...
kind of like that blanketed approach when it comes, to free childcare for children. You know, that blanketed approach that Labor did where everyone got 20 hours free and that was easy and you could make it to all the people and it didn't take a lot, versus this new one they're trying to do that's basically going to take 3 wishes, some kind of sword being pulled out of the stone and holding your tongue a certain way to actually get back what the government's promising you.
30 kilometres per hour. And if you go visit those suburbs, I'll tell you what, not many people, including the buses sometimes, are actually doing 30 kilometres per hour.
So this is the point I wrote to myself. So what he's saying is, if people don't follow the law, that means that law is pointless.
I'd love to have a conversation to him about cannabis and marijuana reform then.
Underage drinking then. Just lower the drinking age. I know lots of 16 and 17-year-olds that drink. People not following the law means the law is pointless. That's what he's saying. In those areas that it's only 30, people aren't going 30 anyway. Okay. And that in that area, in that division at 18 where people are supposed to start drinking, they're not doing it anyway. So let's get rid of that one. It's such a stupid answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know why anyone would fall for it. Anyone. We'll keep going, eh?
Just to be clear, as Transport Minister, you think there are zero downsides to having variable speed limits outside schools? Well, I think that's my question.
Well, I think it's about the balanced approach that we need in this circumstances.
So my question is there a downside to having variable speed limits outside schools as opposed to a blanket approach?
Well, the other option is you have to have a blanket reduction in speed limits. And I'll tell you one of the issues there is if you go to some of those
Is there a downside? Is there a potential downside to having variable speed limits outside schools?
The issue you've got is where you do go to those suburbs which have
It's beyond politician. It's actually just fucking rude now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, answer the question or I mean, you know what? You know that when you get the Snoop Dogg meme coming up and the glasses spin on and land on people's face?
Yep.
If Jack Tane had gone, if you don't answer my question, we're ending this conversation right now. Ask him one more time. He doesn't ask it and go, thank you, Simeon, for your time. Moving on. You know?
Yeah. That would have been perfect. The non-answer is what they tend to go to at the moment, particularly around data sets. Because during that interview, he did give a couple of straight answers to really simple yes-no questions, like, was this a thing that you campaigned on? No, we didn't campaign on increasing the registration rates for vehicles. But when it came to information around data and information around what they'd been told was going to work or not work or costings, he just blustered and wouldn't shut up.
And you know, it doesn't really matter because children are smart enough that if they see a speeding car coming, they'll just get out of the way.
Oh yeah.
We'll keep going.
The 30 kilometre per hour blanket speed limit reductions. Very few of the cars you actually observe are going at that speed limit, and so you're not actually getting the behaviour change that may have been intended. So we need to take a balanced approach, which understands the need for people to get where they need to go, but particularly around those times when children are being picked up or dropped off at school, we want to improve the safety.
Well, sometimes kids go to school early, sometimes they stay late.
And that's why it'll be 8 to 9:30 in the morning, 2:30 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. that's a reasonable, balanced approach that we want to take to this.
So what sort of productivity gains are you getting from introducing those variable speed limits, specifically outside of schools?
Well, what we're doing is we're not simply just slowing the entire...
So the question was, how is this going to improve people's lives? How is it going to improve the economy? What money is it going to save? What's it going to do? How is it going to be better, is what he's asking.
Those variable speed limits, specifically outside of schools?
Well, what we're doing is we're not simply just slowing the entirety of the network down, which is what the last government's approach has been to traffic.
So basically, every answer has been, well, we're going to have a variable result, not like the last guy's heard about. That's basically every answer so far.
Been about slowing people down.
Yeah, we're still doing that for sure.
Blanket speed limit, 30 kilometre per hour speed limit reductions. You've had arterial roads being slowed down. They wanted to slow the entire state highway network.
My question is, what productivity gains? Yeah, I get it.
Network down to 80 kilometres per hour. There is increased travel time.
You don't often see Jack Tame frustrated. No. But that particular, I got it, is you can hear it.
Per hour speed limit reductions. You've had arterial roads being slowed down. They wanted to slow the entire state highway network.
My question is, what productivity gains? Yeah, I get it.
Network down to 80 kilometres per hour. There is increased travel times from those. There is increased travel times when you reduce speed limits.
How much?
Now, it depends on the actual circumstances of where you
How
might
much
put
increased
that,
time?
That particular blanket approach. But we're saying is we want to keep traffic moving at reasonable speeds. But make sure that during those pick up and drop off times we are keeping. And look, I mean, Jack, the last government. I mean, Chris Hipkins even said that he was going to throw.
The last government are gone.
He was going to chuck it on the bonfire. That's what he thought of this.
You're in government now.
We're making the changes New Zealanders voted
for. Minister, Auckland Transport tested how much time was lost for journeys.
So get that. There's two questions that haven't been answered, and Jack Tame's just moving on. And believe it or not, he doesn't answer this question either.
He's in urban areas with lowest.
Don't worry, people who are hating me right now. This has got about 60 seconds, and then Pee Wee Herman will be gone for good.
Speed limits outside schools. Have you seen that research?
Yeah, so there's been a range of estimates.
So what did Auckland Transport find for the changes outside schools?
Well, it depends on which particular zone.
So over 20 minutes, they studied over 20 minutes for 20-minute average journeys. How much time was saved by having the higher speed limits outside schools?
Well, it depends on which school zone you might put it on.
So what did Auckland Transport find?
Well, it'd be a range. So it could have been 20 seconds, could have been a minute.
So they found over a 20-minute. Yeah, they found on average.
There's a range on these things.
Yeah, so they found
on the context of the streets. And
they found over a 20-minute average trip, it saved on average 15 seconds.
Monetize that 15 seconds though. 15 seconds, and we'll show you the numbers. I've got a calculator online next as to why that is.
You've got to add that up across the cumulative number of journeys that are being taken by Aucklanders every single day. And what we're saying is, if you're going past a school when children are being picked up or dropped off at the start of the day, at the end of the day, there will be a slower journey time past those schools.
15
but through the rest of the day, we're not going to take a blanket approach to this. And as I said earlier, you go to those parts of Auckland which have had the 30 kilometres per hour blanket approaches put in place, and you don't see many people following that because it's not reasonable. So we need to take a balanced approach, and then make sure where you do have those slower speed limits during pick up and drop off times, you then enforce it.
So 15 seconds is what Jack Tame says Auckland Transport says. I've got a little calculator here, and I've done the numbers, right? So I don't think it's 500 metres. So this is if it was a 500 metre distance, because I think it might be 100 metres either side of it. But even if it was a 500 metre spread at 50 kilometres per hour, that takes 36 seconds. Yeah. So if we change that to 30 kilometres an hour, it goes from 36 seconds to 60 seconds. So for a 500 kilometre stretch, which I don't think it's that wide, it's 24 seconds. If it was 200 metres, for example, you get the point. 200 metres goes from 24 seconds, and at 50 k's an hour, it would be 14, so it would be 10 seconds. So it's probably 250 metres. So, and I might have seen your tweet today, Paul. Maybe it was yours. Oh no, it was a little blurb you did, I think, talking about being on BHN tonight. The thing about it is, increased speeds is going to lead to increased accidents, without question. Yeah. Without question. So what Simeon Brown and this national government are saying is, Auckland Transport's numbers, for 15 seconds travel from point A to point B, we're prepared to cost the lives, to cost the injuries, to cost the harm to other cars of children. We're prepared for that.
Some of your kids may die, but that's a sacrifice that we're willing to make.
Because our voters think about all this woke nonsense bullshit. We want I didn't fucking die in a war to give an extra 15 seconds to that trip.
No, and the thing I found really interesting about this as well, we don't have a huge amount of current data because of what happened with COVID and lockdowns in terms of how much travel Aucklanders do. But just before COVID hit, it was estimated by, I think it was the Ministry of Transport and Census data. They worked it out that the average Aucklander spends 6.5 hours on the road each week. And if I'm going to add 36 seconds to that, it's going to make all the difference to how much I am or aren't going to go out and drive and the speeds I'm going to go at. And it's just, it's nothing. And the drop of a bucket in the drop of time that I've got to spend out traveling around the city, going slower in front of a school to save somebody's life and costing me 15 to 30 seconds is a small price to pay.
And let's be clear, for the party that set their foundation on blaming and pointing out the other side's virtue signaling, this is nothing but a virtue signal to boomer, boring Russell Coutts types.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. I'm surprised there wasn't a conversation here about the use of Te-Reo in the road signs around schools.
Very good. Now, I'm sorry, you know, when Chewy's not here, team, that I'm not particularly good with the old chat here, but there's a few that have come in. There's some super chats here as well, so thank you very much for those. Gold says Q&A needs to have a live on-screen scorecard, Q5A0 sort of thing. Remember the worm? You around for the worm? Yes. The worm actually got United Future into government. The worm, for people who don't know, was a live audience with a little twisty like-dislike module. And the live audience was when this debates were happening for the political teams would screw the worm like to dislike, and it would create a worm on the screen in front of you. And when Peter Dunn was selling himself as Mr. Sensible, he said some answers that the crowd really liked, and a lot of the worms were going up for Peter Dunn, and they reckon that's one of the things that got United Future into government. Full stop. So there you go. Some kind of worm would be great. We call the worm the chat in this show. That's what our worm is. It's in the ballot. Thank you for the super chat. Public objection also removed from school speed limit. Public objection also. So there's no way to object for it. So they're just going to pass it. It's going to be. It is what it is. Jesus says, thank you for the little super chat there. Oh, I said little again. Thank you for the super chat. Ferraris can't be held up by pesky 5-year-olds. I was thinking perhaps you don't need a Ferrari. It's just a good, reliable second-hand Corolla. What about those? Can they be held up as much? Thank you for the super chat. Another one here from it's in the ballot. 9.4 cents at minimum wage per road user. Okay. And another one here from Ian. You were concerned about us all feeling negative, but we're doing it as a community with empathy and not vilifying and persecuting others. I feel like that's something that's aimed at someone in the chat. Unless it is, I'm missing something, Ian. Do you think that's aimed? Do you think this?
I'm not sure.
Appreciate the super chat though, Ian. If that wasn't aimed at the chat, you feel free to tell us what it was all about, because I'm not quite sure if that was.
I suppose we are kind of vilifying Simeon.
Pee-wee.
Yeah, Pee-wee. But he's got the Eddie Munster haircut. How can you not link him to some kind of monster?
So check out Paul's. Is it on TikTok and stuff tomorrow?
Yeah.
Paul's video for tomorrow, because I couldn't go any more than that. He was only asked 3 questions, and basically all of the answers were, this is how the last guys did it. This is how we're doing it. This is how the last guys did it. This is how we're doing it. This is how the last guys did it. This is how we're doing it. And that's it. That was his only answer. And I couldn't do any more.
No, it's a hard slog. I've always found Simeon really fascinating when he complains about things like speed as well, because his office on Pakuranga Road is one of the busiest transport ways in East Auckland. It's constantly busy, but he's always arguing against bus lanes to get in other forms of transport, or arguing against things like speed bumps down there to slow transport around. You've got a couple of schools not far from where he is, but it's all about making sure traffic can go past his office faster so he can get in and out of his office quicker.
I thought you were going to say that he always complains about not having his booster seat in the back seat of his ministerial BMW, that when they forget his booster seat,
he can't see over the window.
it's best to wait till it's 148. I believe that was the old thing for about getting kids out of their booster seat. If you're under 148 centimetres, you're supposed to be in a booster seat. Maybe.
Didn't they change it to an age? It's sort of any kid under 5 now?
I don't know. I'm well past that, bro.
Same.
Okay, have fun in the chat, guys. Be nice to each other while you're in there. Let's have a look at another story. This isn't really queued up lots of clips, but this is Christopher Luxon. And really, I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I want to keep ramming home to you, and I'm sure we all do. Sure, Paul does on his things, and Chewy does, and Clint does, and Bomber does, that when the government complains about the budgetary restrictions they have, and they put the blame on Labor, it's not true. It's not true. I was speaking to Standards & Poor's today, Paul. I actually have been in communication with them about asking them to come on. Remember, October of last year, they gave New Zealand a AA+ rating because we were fucking rocking after the pandemic. Standard & Poor's gave us a great result. Now, does that mean it was perfect? No. Does that mean that we had inflation under control? No. But compared to what happened with other countries through the pandemic, Standard & Poor's, not your left-wing think tank usually, gave us AA+. So when this government comes out and constantly blames the last government for all the ills of the world, like living outside our means, it's not true. The reason that they haven't got money to splash at other things or need to take money away is because of the projected promises they've made and what they need. Hey, Paul.
That's it. That's exactly what it boils down to.
So let's have a look at Mr. Luxon today. This is just a part of a stand-up. It goes for a couple of minutes, but I just want to, we're going to keep highlighting this, okay? That's one of the promises we've made.
It's really tough. It's really tough, and I really identify. And
I am interested in this point about identifying as well. How does someone who owns 7 houses, who's worth tens of millions of dollars, identify with a public servant, on 70 grand who's about to lose their job? I don't think he understands the word identify. Maybe he can empathize. Maybe that would be a better word. I'd still question it, but identify means I understand how your life is going. I understand. I can understand living in your shoes. He can't. He absolutely can't.
No, not at all.
So he identifies. Let's keep going, shall we?
Empathise with those individuals and those families. I know that there is every effort being made by government departments. They will announce a series of roles that are going. Often, in many cases, they are vacancies. There's no people in those jobs currently. And where possible, they're trying to redeploy those people to other jobs that come up in their organisations. But this is the reality of we have to get government spending under control. We actually have to do everything we can to make sure it's as if.
So, to get government spending under control, the worst thing you could do is to pillage the coffers, to empty the bank account, to stop income coming in, to get government spending under control. So, I always like to think about this. I try and simplify it. I'm a very simple person. If I've got an income coming into my house and I want, and all of a sudden I want to go and buy a new car, I have to therefore do something else with my income. I have to earn more, but I can't just sit there and go, gosh, there's no money left to run the house because I've bought this new car. There's another part to that. You either don't buy the car or you earn more money to pay for the car. So the objection here is if they want to give these tax cuts, they have to have more income from somewhere or they shouldn't be giving the tax cuts.
Exactly. And tax cuts are inflationary if you don't do a few other factors to pull back on them. One of them is reduce government spending. So everything he's doing is basically to walk a tightrope that he's gone and strung himself between two buildings.
Yeah, 100%.
Efficiently and effectively spent as possible so that we can actually free up that money and get it.
Efficiently and effectively spent. I wonder if anyone showed him how families are going to get their $75 back for childcare. Efficiently and effectively. Not so much.
To better frontline services for people. And unfortunately, under the previous administration, too much bureaucracy was created. 16,000 more public servants were added.
So, reporters, I know you watched, listen. The next question has been, where is your evidence that 16,000 new public servants was too many? Where is your evidence that staffing? Look, because it might be. I'm down for the answer, but no one's shown that answer yet. No one has shown why 16,000 new public servants was too many. Show us your workings, Mr. Luxon. Show us why it's too many, and then go on with your cuts. I get the feeling you can't, because what typically happens is National will get in and they will pillage the public service down to a system that doesn't work. Then Labor will come in and go, oh my God, this is not working. They'll build the numbers back up. And then National will come in and go, God, did you see what they did? All these new public servants.
It blew out by so much under the last government for no reason whatsoever.
I used the analogy the other week, Paul, that it's like if you've got a barrel of water right? And National drops it down to 10% of the water, and Labor comes along and goes, God, we need more water than that, and they fill it up to 80%. Then National just comes along and goes, how did you see how much water they put in? When we were here, it was only at 10%, and they tip all the water out. And like we heard John Stewart say last week, and we're paraphrasing a little bit, what the right does, what National does, is they point at the government and they say, this government's broken. It's broken. Government is broken. It doesn't work. Then they get into government and they put policies in place that break government. And then they can take a step back and they can go, see, we told you government was broken, but we've got the answer. We're going to sell some assets. We're going to bring in privatisation, and we're going to run some PPPs, and everything will be okay. We will fix broken government for you.
I don't think I've seen a government break things quite so quickly, though. This is definitely the fastest breakage of a government I've seen.
Yeah, very true. Here we go. Yep, I've got to turn my thing back on.
And as a result, we got yet everything went backwards, and so we have to right size it. And so, it's a tough time, and it's a tough time for people in government and public service, but also I'm conscious of people that are losing their jobs in many other sectors across New Zealand with the economic slowdown.
Many other sectors. Is unemployment at kind of a record low at the moment? What are all these other sectors that are falling apart so quickly?
It's probably ones that like building railway lines between Auckland Central and the airport, those kind of sectors.
Yeah, true.
Ferry building.
Falling apart. Yeah, it's a fair point. Come on back, Mr. Luxon. We love you. All is forgiven. Maybe that's us for Mr. Luxon for tonight.
It's the internet telling us off.
I should really download these before we do it. That would make it easier. All right, I think we're down the point. I think we got the point anyway. Because, that's really just more of him standing up saying, everything's going wrong. It's all Labor's fault. They live beyond their means, and we have to rectify it. It's not the case.
I always find that really funny as well. The complaint that you hear from them a lot is, we've borrowed so much money. Is, we already had a really low debt to GDP ratio. We still have one of the lowest GDP ratios in the OECD. So that's quite fiscally responsible considering what it was that they were paying for. And you deal with things like our GDP increase straight after COVID was one of the best in the OECD as well. Like, the economy was rocking along just fine. And there were probably going to be some bumps in there because there always is. But everything this party does, or that this three-headed government wants to do, is about tax cuts. And they keep playing the victim of, look what we inherited. Like, you inherited something that worked really well and you burnt it to the ground.
100%. Now, I know there's going to be some people out there who are going to be angry with me because I'm about to show you something that people don't want to show. But before we do that, thank you, Sarah, for the super chat. Fat controller spinning more lies. How deluded. I wonder who that's aimed at. It could be aimed at us or me, or it could be aimed at Mr. Luxon. I think he's the bald one, so we'll stick with him. Angry people out there, when I put Simeon Brown up, they're going to be angrier with me, those people, because of who I'm putting on screen right now.
Karen.
I love it when I go into see his Facebook tweets coming through and someone's calling him Karen in the thing. It's just chef's kiss. Yeah. So I'm sorry, folks, for bringing this up for you, but I need to say to you that this is actually mostly about the Free Speech Union, this little part we're doing now. I know, people, it's okay. If we hold hands, we can do this together. I know, it's okay.
Deep breaths, happy thoughts.
Deep breath, because what this is doing is we're just, and Oliver, that's the other thing that I like seeing as well. Because, he made a big deal about Mihinarangi Forbes not using her first name when his first name is Oliver.
I do like, one of my contracts that I work with privately is with a local government organisation, and we make a point of using Te Reo Māori in some of the postings that we do. And you'll always get people who comment about it. They always fit into a very specific sort of category, such as one of Oliver's audience members. And one of the things that seems really weird is that they'll always have a name like Dave or Janie or something that's quite clearly not what's on their birth certificate, complaining about the use of a Te Reo name. It's always very strange.
Okay, so this is actually probably mostly about the Free Speech Union. Since we've been doing this, I've been saying to you guys that the Free Speech Union are a right-wing psyop. It's like we hear about what the Atlas Network does, whether you believe or don't believe that's it. We're not going to get into that, but the accusation is they get into a lot of free speech groups and they use the kind of cover of free speech to put through alt-right talking points. Now, I want to show you this because the Free Speech Union 99 times out of 100 supports right-wing propaganda, and they stand up for right-wingers to do what they got to do. Now, there is one thing that they often go the other way for, and that's drag queen story time. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yep.
Drag queen story time. And this is an episode where the Free Speech Union are talking to Karen Oliver about drag queens and defending their right to say what they've got to say. However, the difference is the Free Speech Union also want you to know that drag queens are perverts. Not my words. Don't be offended by me. I'm just giving this to you. You need this information. So they come out and they stand up for drag queen story time and for their right to speak, but they want us all to make sure that we are aware that drag queens are a perversion. Have you ever heard them say the opposing of something on the right? I would say not. And even saying that, who says all drag queens are left wing? You know what I'm saying? But they're taken as. And so I want to play this for you. It's only 60 seconds. And I just wanted to show for you this, as Chewy says, this, what does he call them? A pile of melting pancake batter. And the Free Speech Union talking about the right for these people to say what they want to say. But by the way, they're perverts, but the right for them. Just have a listen.
Get it.
Yeah, but councils also have to reflect the morality of their communities.
Oh,
and
really?
I come back to it, a basic thing. This is blokes who dress up as parodies of women reading stories to children. It just seems perverted to me, Jonathan. Does it not seem perverted to you?
Personally, I absolutely think it is.
You think it's a perversion?
I am willing to accept. I certainly think it is, and I think a lot of other Kiwis do as well. But
there you go. I think it is. A lot of other Kiwis do as well. Now, he goes on to talk about, about Bethlehem College, and some people might see that as perversion. But he didn't come out saying that about Bethlehem College.
No.
But he did want to make sure that we were aware that the spokesperson from the Free Speech Union is standing up for the right of these people who he's calling perverts to say what they want to say. And I wanted to spell that out to you. There's more about this, Paul, but I can see you frothing at the mouth there when we're going to move to talking about what Brian Tarmac is up to. But you first, please, sir.
This argument always bugs me. I've grown up around drag queens. I know a number of drag queens and drag performers, and I know a number of people who work with kids and children. And there's one thing that's really sort of common in what they're all doing, and it's that they're going out to entertain and find ways to keep people doing fun stuff, interesting stuff. Drag queen story or drag time story hour, we vet it, you run it past police checks, you make sure that all of those safety procedures are in place as you would for somebody who is running a scout troop or a Girl Guides troop. They go through the same stops and checks. The only difference is that this is a performer who is performing as somebody opposite to the gender that they generally present with. It's no different to performers who do like the human statues, for example. They're not statues, but they're still performing. It's such a beat up because it's an easy target, because it's something that seems to be clearly visible that the right wing love to froth at the mouth about, and they come across as nasty no matter how they do it. And the FSU doing we respect their right to free speech, but they're perverted. That just completely undoes any kind of sympathy that they would get from anyone who thinks that they do actually stand up for free speech.
It also gives the bigots who are sitting in this camp of free speech the right to continue their bigotry. It gives permission to those free speech absolutists, which doesn't exist, by the way. There's no such thing as free speech absolutists. If you think there is, try sending a death threat to a politician. You'll find out pretty quickly there's no such thing as free speech absolutum. But there's these people who say that. Now they also have permission to go, okay, so I can take a half step back and pretend that I'm supporting their work, but acknowledging that this is what I really think of them. That's what it does as well.
Yeah, it undercuts everything that they say they stand for.
The other thing I always find funny is these are the same kind of middle-aged white men sort of thing that throughout time have found, the names just jumped out of my head. When in the UK, pantomime. Panto is such a fantastic thing where often you have cross-dressing male as female characters and all this kind of stuff. And it's hilarious. They think it's hilarious, but for some reason, if it's drag queen story time, all of a sudden it's wrong.
It's still a man in a dress performing for kids.
Yep, they love it. Another part of this conversation I want to go into as well It's about old Brian. Rotorua Library's Rainbow Storytime event has been cancelled due to security concerns amid hostile dialogue and a rapid spread of misinformation, the council says. It comes after Destiny Church leader Brian Tamaki last week pledged to shut down the event, prompting calls for a counter-protest to protect attendees. Two Rotorua Lakes Council elected members clashed over differing views of the event. The free event planned for Thursday would have seen Taranaki drag queen entertainers Coco and Erica Flash reading children's books such as Giraffes Can't Dance. That is such a good book. The council, Giraffes Can't Dance is all about a giraffe who can't dance, and he gets taught how to let himself go because of the music, and all of a sudden he becomes the most beautiful dancer in the jungle. It's a great
That sounds
story.
amazing.
Yeah, it is an amazing story. The event, yada, yada, yada. The council released a statement this afternoon, this was late last week, advising the event will no longer be held. It said Rainbow Storytime was a family-friendly event aimed at younger children, including book reading, singing and dancing. The event is focused on acceptance, anti-bullying, inclusion, being kind and having confidence in yourself. It has been a popular event in many other libraries, and registration for the event at Rotorua Library were full. Unfortunately, due to safety concerns, we have had to make the decision to cancel the event. And there's one more thing from this thing. This is Brian Tamaki. Tamaki told New Zealand Herald on Wednesday, in his view, it defied belief parents and grandparents had to stand up against drag queens reading to 3-year-olds in a public library. But finally, common sense has prevailed and the Rotorua Library event has been cancelled. He said it should not have to take him or his church to protest before, in his opinion, inappropriate events such as this were reconsidered. But he was always happy to lend assistance to this cause. Tamaki had said he had set his sights on upcoming Gisborne and Hastings events. The protests were never going to be violent, he said, and protesters believed they had the right to voice their concerns. Let the voice of those protecting the next generation continue to be strong and speak up, stand up, and be prepared to show up. Now from the lovely Calvin Morgan today, let's just play this and then we'll finish up this topic. You ready? This is
I was going to say, did you see the message from Calvin in the chat?
No, I didn't, but I didn't see what it was, but let's play one of his clips.
He's got something to show us in about 10 minutes.
I've run probably hundreds. I've run probably hundreds of protests and many stands, and not one single one have I been a part of that's been violent. They've all been peaceful, and we're known for non-violence. So the thuggery and all that stuff is just a myth. It's been, using their terms, misinformation and disinformation from the left and those people who know very well that when we turn up, we seem to send them packing, and we don't use that sort of force. We use...
We could keep going. This can play in the background while we're talking, Paul. But yeah, you can see no violence there at all, none whatsoever from the Destiny Church people.
They were so pleasant at the Posey Parker rally on their little motorbikes, without lovely and charming, and didn't accidentally run into any MPs at all. Like it's absolute crap. I find it funny though that he seems to genuinely believe that when he reads a headline about we wanted to avoid violence, that he's not the person who's causing that violence. He just doesn't seem to see it. Everybody else can, even his followers can, but there seems to be something that doesn't quite click in his brain about it.
Yes, so that's the drag queen story time. I don't know why I struggle with those words. My brain doesn't quite click them together very well. But look, Brian Tamaki is not the voice for the next generation. Brian Tamaki is not the person to follow. And look, I know lots of people who have been a part of Destiny Church. And typically what happens with a lot of them is they come to a point in their life where they're going, why are we pushing back against this? And they see it slightly differently and they move on. I remember speaking to another, or actually not speaking, hearing, I won't even say what church it is, but hearing research done on a particular church, mega church in Auckland, which is one of the kind of Pentecostal ones. And there was an active drive to need to get some horrifically high number, like 2,000 or 1,000 new people through the door every year. And the reason was because there was 1,500 walking out the other door.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed to keep their numbers up because there were so many going out the other door. My understanding is it's quite similar at our Destiny Church. So they need this presence. He needs to be this voice who puts out to the public, you know, we are the ones to follow. We are the moral majority. We are the moral voice piece in New Zealand. And that will drag a certain number of people into the church. And then they'll find out more about, like, you can't be a leader in Destiny Church if you drink one drop. They will never give money to people. And look, I'll be honest with you, because I used to criticize Destiny Church a lot, I thought I'd better go and check them out. So I've been several times to watch, and I've heard this from the front. They will never give money to people. They'll give gifts to people in need. They'll give food packages, but they'll never give money. That was told to me at the Tauranga branch of Destiny Church when I was doing my research. And all I could think was, imagine if you're a person down the back with a problem with alcohol, being told you can never be a significant person if you drank a touch. Imagine if you just needed $100 to pay your power bill, and this place that you're going that's supposed to support you is saying we never give money. You know, it's just the rules and the construction around them doesn't keep people for very long, is my understanding.
No. And Brian has spent decades picking on a target and trying to make that the next victim of who it is that he's going to be bullying. You know, there was the Enough is Enough rally that he did, stand up for values. There was the weird sort of faux court case that he held on the steps of Parliament a couple of years, but you know, there's always somebody he has to vilify, because if he's vilifying people, then those other people who believe in him are coming up and going, well, how do we do this? How can I help you? And here's some money to make it happen. And he and his wife sit there going, cool, thanks. We need, you know, a new Tesla or a new motorbike. So this will come in really handy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. A couple of super chats that have come in. Peter says librarians have a far stronger free speech record. Thank you for the super chat. And Tanya says, late fee, love your work, team. Thank you. It does feel nice that feels like there's a bit of a team. Like I was just saying, you know, everyone misses Chewy. We all miss Chewy, but to seeing some of these people pop up over the last kind of 7 or 8 days to come on and say good day and help run the thing, it's been a lot of fun. But
it's been a good roster. I'm flattered to be part of it. Yeah, it's been an amazing lineup.
I felt like I owed you one because you asked me online. Can we say that?
Sure.
It's not true at all, Paul. You're doing fantastic things. We love to have you here. Right, last subject matter for today. We're going to talk about Christopher Luxon. Now, I talked about Christopher Luxon. I talked about Labour, and I was negative about an aspect of them pre-election, possibly in the last show.
Do you mean Christopher Luxon, or do you mean Christopher Hipkins?
I'll start this again, and then people who are watching the clips won't know whatsoever I'm talking about.
Cool.
So the last story of the day, let's talk a bit about Christopher Hipkins. I talked a bit about Christopher Hipkins last week, and I talked a bit about the Labour government then last week. I might have been with Spiderhoof. And I got a bit of pushback from some people because the vibe was I was saying they did nothing well. I'm not saying they did nothing well. I'm saying if you look at the numbers and the data, they did a lot right. But when it came to the election, they dropped the ball pretty heavily. And the one thing they didn't do well was use their majority that they could have through that election. Although, as was said last week, I think by Spiderhoof, but they also didn't abuse that. For God's sake, could you imagine if someone like National Act had a majority right now? Holy crap. However, one of the areas that I'm frustrated with is things like capital gains tax. And Chris Hipkins, no, there won't be one as I'm leader. This is not going to happen. We're not going to do it. And so he had a big speech in the weekend. Why they're all doing State of the Nation speeches, God only knows. But he had a speech in the weekend, and finally, he started talking about tax. But this first part of the conversation, it's just a pretty common refrain we're hearing from people at the moment, talking about Nationals numbers pre-election and who is to blame for today's economy. And when I say today's economy, I'm also talking about projecting forward. Who's to blame for the future economy of New Zealand under this government?
Before the election, just about every economist in New Zealand said that the National Party's numbers just didn't add up. But Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis went round the country telling everybody that their numbers were rock solid. Day after day, it becomes abundantly clear that the economists were right and that the National Party was willing to say whatever they needed to say.
Not a criticism of Labour, but it's fair to ask the question, why did Labor lose then?
Mm-hmm.
If we all knew, and we knew, we looked at the numbers, we told you, if we all knew, why did they lose? And I'm not saying that like, well, why'd you fucking lose? I mean, actually, what happened?
What were the reasons?
Yeah, what were the reasons that that National was able to pull the wool over so many people's eyes? Because everyone in the media, be it independent like this or Legacy, were saying these numbers aren't working. So I agree with what Chris Hipkins is saying right now, and I think it's fair. But taking a step back then, why did the left lose? If all that was known? I think that's sort of the question maybe if I was in that caucus I'd be wanting to ask. Because if what you want to do is how to not let it happen in 2.5 years from now, that's the thing.
In order to win the election, and now they cannot deliver. Let me be absolutely clear. The financial crisis that the current government claims that they inherited is one that they have created for themselves.
100%.
National told New Zealanders that their promises were affordable and that they could balance the books just by cutting back on so-called wasteful spending. Increasing the number of teachers, nurses, doctors and police that we employ and paying them better is not wasteful spending. It's certainly not wasteful spending to rebuild our schools and hospitals, our roads and our water infrastructure, and to invest in public transport. Properly supporting those with disabilities is not wasteful spending.
That's a good line. After last week, that's a real good line.
Vital preventative health care, like free prescriptions and cheaper doctors' visits, is not wasteful spending. I could go on. The list is a long one. But let me cut to the chase. National's plan to cut spending on public services that New Zealanders rely on to fund tax cuts will leave us all worse off.
All true.
Mm-hmm.
But
every word of it.
All of that was true before the election as well.
Yes.
And they lost. And I think, who were we speaking to? We had a guest on. I might have even been Clinton the time he came on as a guest. And all of the things we were saying were true. And he said, yes, but we still have to realise that they still won. They still won.
Yeah.
So why, with all these truths out there, did they still win? And I'm not asking that question tonight because there may not be an answer to it, but I've got one more clip to play from there, Paul. But when we jump in now, what would you like to speak to those truths that Mr. Hipkins just laid out?
I think the important thing to look at is those were truths at the time, but it wasn't Labor that was pushing back on it as much as it was the CTU. They were the ones that were running the numbers, that were releasing things to the press saying, look, this is wrong. And then Labor was doing it. And then the press picked it up sort of a week or so later. So I think if Labor had been a little bit more onto it with pushing those numbers to begin with, it would have felt more like a battle going into the election. And that could be part of the reason for the outcome that we got.
Well, let me tell you something that's going on at the moment. What happened when Jacinda went in and Jacinda took over, there was a really slick, well-educated, I don't mean smart, but like well-educated in the world of politics, really strong backroom, the Matt McCartans and those guys who've been involved for the last 10 years. It was a really solid, strong backroom that was really onto it, right? When Hipkins took over and this election just gone, it's like there's a whole bunch of new people back there.
Yes.
It's like there are new, not the people you see, but behind the scenes, there's a new team. It's all new. Now, I'm prepared to go, so last election was a bit of a learning curve for them and they'll hopefully be better next election. But one of the reasons I think that we saw what we saw, like, for example, the UK Labour Party sent people across. And I was always like, why the hell did Labour wait till 4 weeks out from the election? It didn't happen that way. The UK Labour Party offered their people, because I guess the UK Labour Party could go, oh, these guys are in trouble, we better send some people over. So inexperience in the back rooms, not that hard-nosed political nous and people who had fought 3 elections before, is the people that were fighting this election, and I think it showed. Inexperience showed, not from the people you see on camera, but from the people you don't see behind the scenes. I think that's probably a big part of it, Paul.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think one of the other factors that comes in there, though, is that National spent their money better in their campaign. They knew they hired, the top online marketing agency for things like TikTok and Instagram, and that showed. That they spent the money where they needed to get those markets, and the younger team in Labour should have picked up on that and didn't.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's go to this last comment, and this last comment is and I think the way I wrote in the write-up for tonight's show is Hipkins finally wants to talk about tax, because he certainly didn't pre-election. Let's listen to what he's got to say.
Our current tax system is inequitable and it's unsustainable. We have one of the least diversified tax systems in the world, meaning public investment into things like health, education, welfare, housing and infrastructure is more reliant on income tax than most of the other countries that we compare ourselves to. In other words, those who are living their earnings through salary and wages are contributing a greater share than those who earn their income through wealth. Under this government, those with multiple investment properties are getting huge tax breaks, while those on salary and wages pay tax on every single dollar that they earn. When even the IMF is saying that our tax system is broken, it really is time to do something.
So there you go. That's all we need, because, I mean, I don't think he literally mentions capital gains tax in that speech. Maybe he did. But obviously, look, the ball that was dropped pre-election, I don't want to keep kicking the thing when it's dead, but that the capital gains tax was an answer to a problem and popular. So the reason to push it away was like, it was bizarre. But anyway, let's be optimists and go, maybe they'll spend the next 2.5 years getting ready to actually address that topic, tax, better than they did 6 months ago.
Well, the Greens had such a comprehensive tax plan going into the election. It worked on every level. It was a lot fairer. It was working on things like reports that had been done beforehand, because we're never going to see the last report because, you know, the government cancelled that under urgency. But it worked on the data that was there about how to have an equitable tax system that got us better earnings and saw better expenditure available to the government. That is what you want in a tax plan. But people also went, oh, it's the Greens. So they didn't see it as a viable tax plan option because it's the Greens. It's such a weird, delicate balancing act. But I mean, do you remember when Nicola Willis presented Jack Tame her workings for their budget? You know, it was literally one sheet, and he's just sort of sitting there going, oh, is that it? Yeah, none of the big parties had workable tax plans that dealt with the inequities in the system as it is. So it's about time that they actually did something about it. But they're always too scared to do something that scares the core voters, because they know that people over the age of 60 and 70 are always going to go out and vote, and they don't like capital gains tax. They don't like the idea of having a regulated system for legalized cannabis. You know, so we're going to keep things the way they are to keep those people happy, because they're the ones that fund us and that we know go out and vote.
Speaking of Nicola Willis, I like working with people who do this by themselves. Like, see, when I wander off to try and load something up quickly, you just keep talking, which is great. I've approached Bryce Edwards to come on our show tomorrow night. I don't know if he can or if he can't, but he released an article today saying Nicola Willis, is that the right one? Anyway, he's released an article today saying
basically Nicola 2023.
No, yeah. So there's one that's come out today. That's the video for it, obviously, but I've copied the wrong link because it's in my email, which is over here, and I'm not going to put that up on screen. The first paragraph says, when she was campaigning to be Minister of Finance last year, Nicola Willis pledged she would resign from the job if she had failed to deliver tax cuts in her first budget. Now, it's that pledge, along with the Prime Minister Christopher Luxon's pride, that seems to be the only reason that the national-led government is continuing to promise tax cuts in the face of opposition from just about every economist and political commentator from across the political spectrum. So that's a story that Bryce Edwards released today. I've texted Bryce and asked if he wants to come and talk to us tomorrow. He may or may not. I don't know. If he doesn't, though, we'll probably look at that story anyway. Basically, the story says there is a caveat to get out of jail free for Nicola Willis. If she releases those tax by everyone gets $1 back, then technically she's done it. But maybe what she was hinting at and what we're going to get should be enough for her to have to fulfill that pledge that she would quit as finance minister if she didn't fulfill the promises she made, because they're not going to be the promises she made. They're going to be there's going to be tax cuts, but they're not going to be the promises they made. Anyway. No, not at all. Selling everything they've got on tax cuts is a losing procedure, because everybody knows that we don't need them, that they can't afford them, but they've got to deliver them, otherwise they fail at what they're doing. And realistically, when you've got New Zealand First and ACT taking up so much oxygen either side, this is what people talk about when it comes to the National Party. It's the National Party tax cut. It's the National Party tax plan. That's the only thing that they're getting any kind of coverage that isn't being sucked away from airtime by the other two. Yeah, no. Hey, Paul, this has been fun tonight. I was just thinking, have you come on and done this before? Have you been the host before?
Not been a host. I was a very, very quick guest. I think on election night, actually. I was juggling like 4 or 5 different things that night.
Well, it's been lovely to have you on.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely being here.
We all say it's been lovely to have you on, but I know that many in the chat are just going, you can celebrate having Paul on and Chewy coming back tomorrow night. You can do
absolutely.
both.
I'm a Chewy stan. I'm here for him. I see he's in the chat at the moment.
Oh, is he?
He has been commenting. So he's keeping himself busy.
Okay, I haven't seen it. This shows how little I because I'm doing everything. I'm pushing all the buttons, and that's why I don't get such a. Yeah, I'm just looking to see if the young fella's been in there. No, all right. Oh, they're at Chewy. Okay, yeah, all right, fair enough. All right, so Chewy's due to be back tomorrow night. There we go. Hey, son. I don't know what the topic's about, but I just found him. Sword even apparently is yes. He's due to be back tomorrow night.
Maybe he's talking about the actual sword.
Wow. This is what's your setup? Is that like a bedroom or an office for you, or what's the deal?
It's a studio for me in the house that I've built from the ground up. Used to be a bedroom, decided to convert it because I had the time and the space.
So that means the stuff behind you was placed there on purpose. It's a set for your studio. Nice.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of collectibles. Like that's a sword from The Witcher. There's a lightsaber hidden up there. All the pictures are autographed. Like that, they're all. It's all it's a personal playground for mine.
Yeah, I actually live in a log cabin. That's
perfect.
That's the wall that goes outside in my log cabin. So
perfect.
It's a big market for log cabins in Dunedin.
I'm not surprised.
All right, let us be gone. Thank you, team. Appreciate that everyone's been here, even the little ginger fireball, Mount Chifusius, whatever people were calling him the other day. Great to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us, Paul. It's been a real pleasure. Now,
My pleasure. Thank you.
People find you on TikTok? How do we find you?
You can find me if you just do a search for Paul, the other one, it generally comes up these days. If you can find my link tree, it links to everything. So yeah, go and follow me. If you want to follow me on YouTube, that'd be brilliant because I'm so close to 1,000 followers. I would love to get over that line.
Nice. I think I might have followed you in the last couple of days. There we go. Paul, the other one, Paul Barlow, NZ, in there. And I like it how you've got exactly the same video every single time. I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, same cover. I had a brilliant designer approach me going, can I do something because your work is terrible? I'm like, yes, absolutely, because my work is terrible. And she came up with some really amazing branding stuff. Really impressed with her.
Yeah, mine are terrible. I just put little snippets of the video that's at hand because I'm lazy.
It does. I don't think people realize how much effort goes into that kind of branding sometimes. You know, when you're putting out the amount of content that you're putting out, Pat, to do screen grabs and shots and write-ups, and like that's a ton of work that goes into it.
This would be the time at a grifter would now pitch for Patreon, but I won't do that because mention how much time there is. All right, we're going to go now. Thanks, team. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hero News. So happy to see so many of you there in the chat, and we all say see you tomorrow night, Chewy, and Paul, we'll have you back, mate. Anytime you want to come, just let us know. It's been a great night, and we look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thanks again. Thanks, everybody.